First tonight, a rare insight into the battle against exploitation in Leicester's garment industry. Fast fashion workers have told us why they accepted as little as £3 an hour. Meanwhile, a support group's revealed that almost 100 workers have recovered wages that were never paid at all. And we can reveal that since a crackdown on sweatshops began, the vast majority of Leicester's garment factories have shut down. Our social affairs correspondent Jeremy Ball has this special investigation.
Boom years in Leicester as fast fashion hit the high street, outsourcing to subcontractors, driving cutthroat competition. Paramjeet worked at several factories earning the minimum wage, but she also spent years in jobs that paid just £3 to £5 an hour.
Very, very bad.
She told me how one factory created a paper trail to avoid getting caught.
They would show full pay on the payslip, but once the money was in my bank, I was told to return it. I used to give it back in cash.
And how exploited did you feel?
It felt dirty and bad, but I needed to work. No one was paying more.
Paramjeet's one of several workers who've given me very similar accounts of earning £5 an hour or less at garment factories here in Leicester. All of them moved here from India. Most of them wouldn't speak publicly for fear of repercussions. And this is where they've all come for help and advice. The Fashion Advice Bureau was set up 2.5 years ago to tackle exploitation in Leicester's garment industry. It's been funded by several retail brands, including ASOS and Next. Tariq helped Paramjeet recover hundreds of pounds.
When people come to us, people are very desperate, and it's been the absolute norm. Because of those language barriers, they find it really, really tough to find work. And if they don't find work in a certain period of time, they could end up losing their benefits. The way the people get the job is as a favour. I can pay you maybe £3, £4, £5 an hour for now, okay? And later on, when you find a better job or when you build up your experience, you can move on.
This Leicester factory was making counterfeit designer clothes, with 5 workers living here, surrounded by paint and chemicals. And Tariq's helped almost 100 others who complained wages hadn't been paid by telling their bosses he can mediate with the retailers they're working for.
As soon as I say, do you want me to raise it with the brand, they'll be like, well, no, you know what, maybe we can resolve it between ourselves. Why don't we just pay on a non-prejudice basis? We've recovered £180,000 worth of missing or unpaid wages in the past 2 years. So one lady actually came to us. She burst into tears. She revealed that she's not been paid £5,000 worth of wages for a period of 3 months. We then learned further 60 people have not been paid their wages at all, in the same situation as that worker. We then basically put pressure on the employer to pay the wages. We then learned the employer himself was struggling as well. We then helped the employer get paid as well.
The call for action followed damaging headlines about the online retailer Boohoo, which responded by setting up this showpiece ethical manufacturing centre. A critical report found Boohoo hadn't done enough to stop its local subcontractors exploiting workers who made its clothes. Workers like Paramjeet, who said she didn't have any alternative.
We were desperate. We had to pay council tax, the gas bill, the rent. I was angry, but I had to work. They would say, work fast, work needs to go. It felt horrible.
Paramjeet was part of Labour Behind the Labels campaign to protect Leicester's garment workers. They're confident it is tackling exploitation. But now they're worried about how many jobs are being lost as factories close and suppliers move their contracts overseas.
Imagine what exploitation is happening there. Child labour, trade unions being killed in factories. We've proven that garment workers can be helped. A brand who is producing in the UK, even with exploitation in their chain, is better than a brand that is producing out of the UK.
But for Paramjeet, it's too late. She's been out of work since last year, and her prospects of finding another job look bleak.
Well, Jeremy's here in the studio with us now. We can talk about solutions later in the week, but do we know the scale of these factory closures?
Yeah, well, put simply, Sarah, Leicester has lost at least 4 out of 5 of its garment factories just since the start of the pandemic, and that is according to separate estimates I've had from 2 trade bodies and the City Council. The precise numbers depend on whether you count smaller firms who might sew on buttons, for example. But just have a look at this. One estimate from the Apparel and Textiles Manufacturers Association, they reckon Leicester had around 700 garment factories back in 2019. Now just 100 at most have survived, they say. It could be as few as 60. The council says most of those firms shut down in 2022. And in addition to that, more and more of the surviving ones are now outsourcing overseas.
And there's been a big push to tackle sweatshops in Leicester, hasn't there? What kind of thing did that involve?
Well, the first big challenge actually was persuading some of these workers that they were being underpaid. I mean, we spoke to one woman who said she'd done several jobs for £4 an hour, and she thought that was reasonable because she just arrived from India. And there has been a lot of action. We've seen minimum wage investigations. One firm was served with a slavery and trafficking order. As well as that, one charity identified several cases of labour abuse at garment factories in Leicester. What we haven't seen yet is evidence of more endemic modern slavery, but we are still waiting for a big government report on this. That was due to be published last year.
Oh, OK. So what's being done to protect Leicester's garment industry?
First of all, there's a big campaign by Labour Behind the Label, and they want a commitment from the retail brands to order at least 1% of their garments to be made in factories in Leicester. The City Council told me that it's been offering training and support for workers and businesses, and that includes advice on exploring different markets. And, you know, we have been here before. Huge employers like Cora in Leicester closed down in the 1990s. So I think, you know, one big question is, can Leicester's garment industry reinvent itself again? That is a question we're going to be trying to answer later this week. Tomorrow, we're going to be visiting 2 abandoned factories and talking to their bosses too.
Interesting. Jeremy, thank you so much for that.